Lydia, what's going
What's
on?
up? Happy Monday.
Absolutely. It's only Monday though. Geez,
It's
it feels
only
like
Monday.
it feels a little later than that, man, in the week. But I'm really excited about tonight. I really am excited about tonight. And how many more days we got? 45 more days for the
45. Like I was on the portal today and I was like, only 45 days left to like such a powerful event.
wow. For those that don't know what's coming up in 45 days, Lydia, let them know.
Whoop, whoop. The Transformational Leadership Conference is coming your way in 45 days.
Where it's
So
gonna be,
exciting.
Lydia? Where it's gonna be at, Lydia? Where it's gonna be?
Columbia University. Like, y'all, okay, let's just talk about this, okay? Like, this
Let's talk about it.
conference is happening at Teachers College at Columbia University. And for those of you who are not New Yorkers, if y'all don't know how powerful this is, like, if we just take a moment and just think about equity and access, for a very long time, we did not take up space in places like Teachers College at Columbia University. We walked by, we knew the building, we probably didn't even apply there to go to college, to be totally honest. And now here it is in 2023, like 500 transformational leaders of color showing up in all their unapologetic blackness will be in this
Yes.
building. Like, that's everything to me. Like, how do you feel? Like, how do you process that in your mind?
Yo, you know what's funny? It's real, still very surreal to me. It's hard to really process it. I'm really looking forward to that day. I really, obviously getting to know all the people, all the presenters, and to know them on a first name basis, and for as long as I did, I mean, as long as I have, what's so special about it is I know how awesome all of them are individually. Now bringing them
Yeah.
all together under one roof, I just know that this place is just going to be off the hook. The energy is going to be on a whole nother level. And so I'm really looking forward to just being able to put it together. And you know what, Lydia, I keep thinking when I think conferences and speakers, there's always the speakers like the Les Browns or or Dr. Eric Thomas, and how powerful and loud at times they can be, and that generates a level of energy. But I kept thinking about our guest for today, and I was like, you know what? But it's weird because similar to you, they don't talk a lot, but they carry a
Mm-hmm.
big stick. They walk tall and carry a big stick. And I kept thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. There's always this misconception that people think that quiet people are weak and that the loud ones are the strongest. But I'm here to tell you today,
Mm.
based on who we got coming in here in a moment, it's really important for us to understand that we should never assume that loud is strong and quiet is weak. And it's crazy to see these two come to the stage. But more importantly, I think I, at times, similar to you don't even know they're in a room, but they're at every OSG
Mm.
event. They're always supporting everybody else. They're in schools all across this country. And so, what's so fly about them is that they are the epitome of what it means for people to just be able to just keep your head down and just get to work. They don't do a lot of
Let's get to
talking,
work.
they get to work. So, I think it's time that we bring up our two guests for today. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. So it is my honor and my pleasure. So this is the second time we want to bring some of the men to the stage, but today we got two more of our powerful sis. We got Jamila Sams and we got Chloe Taylor, who will both be presenting
Yes.
at the leadership conference.
Yes.
Hello, hello,
Wow.
hello, y'all.
What's up, ladies? How y'all doing?
Hey, hey, I love that intro. I felt like that was perfect.
Yo, but with Chloe and Jamila, so it's funny, right? Because I think in all three of you, I can say I've basically been talking to Lydia for months just about how dope she is, but she's always in the background. I think it was time
Mhm.
for her to start being more out in the front and letting people see who she was. And look at what we got now. She's up here with me. And then I always, again, Chloe, you know, I mean, I think I bumped into you at most schools that I work in throughout New York City, and even a couple outside of New York City. And again, unless I saw you, I didn't always hear you. But when I saw the work that you did, it
Mm.
spoke volumes. Then I talk about this to Jamila Sams. The same thing. I called her a couple of months ago, and I was like, "Yo, it's time. It's time for you to get out in front of the camera. It's time for you to get out here and let people know what we do for the culture is all about. And I can tell you, every time I turn on Instagram or even now, she and I are always on Zooms together, conducting business, just to see the confidence that has been built by people like yourselves who don't always speak a lot, but for you all to actually go through the process of presenting a proposal and being chosen, despite never really talking a lot to people, I think it really speaks volumes to the work that you're doing. And so, Lydia, I think this has been one of the better experiences for me watching the array of talent that's coming to present. But these two in particular, I think people got to keep a close eye on, because don't let their quiet demeanor fool you one bit.
Don't let it fool you.
Don't let it.
So I mean, let's get but like let's get into that. Like let's talk about some of the work that y'all have been doing. And I think that both of you are in two really you know what's funny? I want to say that those markets are becoming oversaturated because now everyone wants to be an SEL professional and everyone wants to be an ed tech specialist. But you guys bring a really different and unique twist to the game. And so, I mean, I want to start with you, Jamila. I mean, talk to us a little bit about for the culture. Tell us about your session and sort of like what can attendees expect to walk away with that's going to be so unique. Because I mean, I've heard you speak. I mean, you did a little pre-interview and I was like, oh goodness, how do we even trim down her video? Talk to us about what this work is, and just what someone could look forward to when they engage in your work, and how even your fusion with hip hop. I want to hear about that too. So please tell us more.
Absolutely. So hopefully I can shock you all tonight. And put on a boulder hat, a little kaboom, stepped in the room hat. So Jamila Sams, the founder of We Do It for the Culture and go to Miss Sams Consulting. And I'm really excited to be presenting this year at the OSG Transformation Leadership Conference, particularly because of that word transformation. I use that a lot in having conversations with educators about kind of getting out of their own way and doing some internal social emotional learning work around just who they are and what do they bring to the table. And so we know that transformational work is incremental. We know that transformational work needs to be led with a sense of urgency. There's nothing passive about transformational work. And ultimately, those are the type of relationships that we want to build with not only our school leaders, but students as well as teachers as well. And so when we think about transforming an entire school community around school culture, the reason why I chose this platform, SEL and advisory, is because advisory really is a great time to build those transformational relationships. They should be happening all day, every day. However, sometimes you just need that dedicated time and space to have these safe and brave conversations with youth where teachers can kind of relax and take off their teacher hat or their administrator hat and really just serve as a mentor or a coach to students. And that requires a certain level of vulnerability, where a lot of educators were taught to teach content and not human beings. And so the great thing about advisory is that you have that time, that dedicated time to have what I like to call real talk with students. But depending on where you go and what school you enter, advisory may have a very negative connotation. It should be positive, but oftentimes it has a very negative connotation. And what I found is that typically advisories fail for two reasons. One, there's a disconnect between the adults and the students, and that could be for a myriad of reasons, right? It could be because of cultural differences. It could be socioeconomic background. It could be age. There's all these disconnects, but the biggest disconnect is really just adults' inability to be vulnerable, open, and share more about themselves with young people, and creating that space for students to kind of be open and share with each other. The second reason why a lot of advisory programs fail is that teachers, again, we know that teachers have a lot on their plate. And if they have content area classes to prepare for, they often, feel inundated with another thing to plan for. And so finding social emotional learning curricula that is not only engaging but culturally responsive has also been a really huge challenge for a lot of the schools that I work with. And so a few years ago, I wanted to, as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for a way to solve a problem. And so that was a problem that I noticed in the field. There aren't a lot of culturally responsive, engaging SEL curricula. A lot of the ones that are out there, I mean, there's no other way to say it, it's boring. And so students tap out. And as a result, advisory fails, and then we start the cycle all over again. And so I created a culturally responsive social emotional learning curriculum called We Do It for the Culture, which is rooted in the elements of hip hop. And what I've done is I've tied those 5 elements of hip hop to the 5 SEL competencies. And as a result, students see themselves, they're more comfortable in their own skin. They're more comfortable in having conversations around, real world problems that they're experiencing. So, you can create space to talk about what happened with Tyree Nichols. You can create space to talk about, some of the joy that you're experiencing, and celebrating that joy doesn't always have to be trauma related. So those spaces are really crucial in building connections with students, but it really takes a transformational leader in order to cultivate that space for educators and students alike. And so I'm really excited to be able to share just techniques and strategies for how to make that happen in all schools.
Wow, that's powerful. That's
Wow.
powerful. That's real powerful, Jamila. And I'm gonna just go over to Chloe, right? Because Chloe, in 2012, I think it is the United States, they proposed this new initiative called STEM and STEAM, as a new form of K-12 education. We're talking over 10 years. And I think in my experiences in walking through buildings across this country, sometimes you get an idea of what STEM is. And sometimes you're like, wait a minute, shouldn't it be a lot more fun and interactive for young people than it really is? And I get, sometimes get a little bit exhausted in hearing the conversation around STEM and STEAM from just the regular standpoint of just, this is what it is. We need to start showing what STEM and STEAM looks like school-wide and across this country. And so your session is entitled Building a Strong STEAM Program. And so I just want to ask you this question, like, what are we doing to really bring STEM and STEAM to life in the lives of young people? What are we doing to prepare them for the jobs that are coming in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Because I still struggle with schools who talk about STEM and STEAM and really don't truly prepare kids for the jobs of the future. We already know that there's statistics that prove that our kids are just not prepared for the workforce as it relates to STEM and STEAM. So talk to us a little bit about your session and just what can we do as a profession to enhance those skills for our young people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I feel like the first place to start is to acknowledge what we don't know. And for a lot of us, going through school from kindergarten all the way through high school, we may not have received a STEM or STEAM program at all, or had any type of training in that area. A lot of the technology that we're learning today and teaching today is emerging. So it didn't exist when we went to school. And I feel like we can start from a place of, hey, a lot of us don't have this background, but we're learning alongside students. And what do they need to learn? And to think about the fact that to have a truly strong STEAM program, you need to understand that it's going to constantly evolve. So you'll see, I mean, I definitely experienced this hype cycle of tech that's happening. So it's NFTs, it's Web3, that now it's AI, art, and Chat GPT, and all these different like hype cycles that keep cycling through. But what is foundational? My session is really about like, what do we need to understand about the future, and what skills will help our students learn about the future, and not just gimmicks that we can catch on to, because they come and go. Even looking at trends online, like, become a girl in tech, do these types of things, and then the layoffs happen, right? It's all very cyclical, but we need to really think about how we can build curriculum for students that allows them to address change, to solve problems, to build to find equity in the world and like solve big problems through the use of technology as opposed to teaching singular technologies. Coding's great, you know, learning how to build a chatbot in Python or do these skills that are becoming really profitable and popular. They're great in isolation, but what's better and what's long lasting and what's foundational is thinking about how to support mental health or social emotional learning through responsive chatbots, right? It's built for a purpose. It's not just a skill taught just to say, oh, you know, I can do it. And so I feel like we're falling a little bit short. And speaking to that question is, you know, school leaders are sometimes getting really excited about certain skills, but are forgetting the projects around them and how they can be useful. I have a friend who did a chemistry project in high school years ago about chemical hair relaxers and like really a deep dive and how it affects the body and learning really on a molecular level how it operates and how it affects the body. And she talks about that all the time. It was like really coming to life for her because it was connected to something that she could personally relate to. And what I'd love to see and what I'm going to emphasize in my transformational leadership session is we've got to have an underpinning of technology that allows students to build, create, solve, transform in the future, but we have to have that sight. We have to think about it in that way, or else it really falls short.
So let me just ask another question, just a follow up to that, though, and I think both you and Jamila can answer this. Is that when I think about STEM and I think about STEAM and I think about again making it a real thing as it relates to real college and career readiness. Mm-hmm. What are some of the opportunities or jobs that will be available to our young people that our school leaders need to be aware of, right? Because I think we're still preparing kids to be able to go work in the post office and McDonald's and things like that, not understanding that those things are completely automated at this point, you know, or we're sending them to be involved in engineering and things like that, and understand engineering doesn't look the same as it did before. When we talk about sending them to do architecture, they're not necessarily using wood anymore, that we got 3D printers that are building houses and cars. So both of you, based on this conversation around STEM and STEAM, how do you all plan to deliver the message to the school leaders about what jobs are available and what true college and career readiness looks like?
That's good. That's a great question. That's good.
I think it goes back to this sense of urgency, right? A lot of the educators that I speak with, they're not always willing to take risks when it comes to deviating from the script, when it comes from deviating from what the district passes down and says, hey, these are the standards that you need to teach. And there's a level of fear. So it goes back to, you know, adult SEL, like, where's your sense of urgency for you to take the time to do the work, to research, okay, because some educators may not know where tech is going, right? Yeah. Or where any of these content areas are going in the next 10 to 15 years. They should know, but they don't. And so therefore, just being very intentional about doing the research so that they can prepare themselves, then in turn prepare the students for what's happening. I think that when you think about, I'm no STEM or STEAM expert, but in terms of increasing the engagement, I think young people need to see what's possible, what's happening. And technology and STEM is all around our students, but oftentimes they don't know how to name it. And so by giving it a name and helping them to see this is how it impacts your life now, and this is how it will be impacting your life down the road, that those are concrete examples that students can get excited about. But no disrespect to a lot of the founding forefathers when it comes to STEM, but we need to be talking about what's happening like now. We can't still be talking about the peanuts and all of the Garrett P. Morgan, like that's great, but like let's talk about what's happening like right now, so that students can get excited about innovation and wanting to learn more and get ready for the future. So it still starts with the mindset.
Yeah. I agree with that. I feel like there is so much context in how revolutionary those inventions were at the time, right? And I love tying that into the sense of how we are transformational, to use our catchphrase, in STEAM. But we don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's 5-10 years ahead of us. But what we can look at is the recent past. And I mean, if we look at the past 10, 5, 3 years, there's been rapid change in what is necessary for a student to have workforce development skills. Or, I mean, thinking back 15 years, we didn't even have the apps and phones and capabilities that we have. Working as software developers, mobile developers, these jobs weren't things that we could really predict. And we didn't have, going through school at that time, we didn't even have smartphones to know that that was something you could innovate on. With the pandemic, thinking about how important learning about how viruses spread and the demand for medical careers, it's all happening all the time. So what trends say are that, and this is really important in terms of thinking about our students right now, that the use of AI is, we know AI is going to obliterate a lot of jobs. Anything that's data processing, anything, even down to, medical assessments. I've heard of AI lawyers. There are algorithms that
Oh,
are
wow.
deciding who gets, what legal sentence, if they're going to get out of prison. They're starting to use algorithms in ways that really call into question a lot of ethics. So a lot of current jobs that can be automated, we can bet on those jobs being obliterated. And recently with the DOE blocking ChatGPT and probably going to block other AI platforms, it tells us that we're not in a place where we can teach students how to harness the power of AI correctly. We're just trying to push back on it.
To stop it.
And I get why. I know there's a lot of ethical reasons, and I don't necessarily agree with the use of it for certain ages, but technology and innovation is not something you can really stop. And so it's always more advantageous to work with it. And I want, speaking in terms of a lot of workforce skills, I want students to really be thinking about, okay, if this is a tool I have, how can I use it to build with? How can I use this to innovate with? How can I harness it to do things that have not been done before? And think about the jobs that will do that, because simple processing, the law, who would have thought, but law is one of the main industries that will be affected by AI, simply because it's a lot of data, it's a lot of reading and processing and compiling files and things like that. But how can we then utilize that to still be advocates for social justice with the law, still understand these algorithms, still advocate for our people through the use of these skills, and not just try to work against them, because that's a fight we cannot win.
Yeah, I think, and Lydia helped me with this one, because I think the conversation around educators and I think at times our lack of predictability as to what the future looks like is a problem all in itself. We're the true
Oh, yeah.
we're the transformers of the lives of young people, but yet and still we don't predict or help look at trends in a way of what's really going to happen 10 years down the road. And we're the ones who are we're going to be the real transformational leaders here. And so I think back to something I've talked about in the past about the Jetsons, right? We know everybody kind of grew up watching the Jetsons, but we were watching in the 80s and the 90s, but most people don't know that the Jetsons was created in 1962, in September of 1962. We're talking about, there was flying cars, there was FaceTime, there was all that stuff happening then, and all we looked at it was for entertainment values. I think what we have to do in these conversations, especially with our Black and brown family and educators within these communities, is that we got to be able to just stop looking at things for entertainment value and really say, how do we use this to transform the world? I mean, it could have been that simple that somebody thought. Think about it. Somebody thought to put a screen up and have two people talk back and forth back in 1962. So people can't tell me we can't predict the future. People can't tell me that we can't create the future because it has been done in the past. You know, I just think as educators, I push most of our educational leaders to stop for a moment and just think, is what happens in my school now going to help my kids 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And if the answer is
And
no, then acquire the support of people like Jamila and Chloe to help you to think it through. People like Brandon from Vivid Imaginations and other people like that. Go ahead, Lydia.
I agree. No, I was going to say, and I think the key is considering where innovation and entrepreneurial mindset fuses, right? Because when we start to compose the mindset of where do I now use innovation to solve a problem, the forecasting is automatic. It's automatic because once you're solving a problem, because a problem is not just here for the moment, it's generally progressive, right? It continues on and on and on and on. I think once we start to create that bridge between the two, I think at that point, and I think that that's the simplest way for educators to look at how do I do that? How do I provide or how do I effectively forecast for my young people? And I think when we encourage young people and even as educators, when you're thinking about how innovation solves a problem, you are almost instantaneously forecasting. And then the rest is just research, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's nothing to Google. It's all at our fingertips now. They're forecasting trends about for example, the virtual event space where we are right now. We were forced into this during COVID, but we realized, I mean, we can go outside. We could have had this interview in person, but this should never die because we realize the trends. And I mean, the predictions in terms of like what the market is going to hold in 2026 in this space, like meeting spaces will forever have a virtual component. Think about it. You have an event now. People are like, well, where's the virtual option? Right? Because we solved the problem during COVID and it's going to be long lasting. So I mean, you have a very valid point, and I'm so excited to see and to hear more. Like,
But think about this, right? So I guess let's just start with this quick exercise right now with us four in the room, because I think as we look at these boxes, it looks as individuals, right? We're all individuals in this box, but collectively, as we start talking about true transformation, it has to be done in collaboration with one another, right? And so I am a
absolutely.
person who works with school leaders and community leaders all across the country. And so I'm going to just start this exercise by just throwing out an issue and then saying, okay, Lydia, Chloe, Jamila, how do you all plan to attack it from your skill set? All right. So again, I'll go back to what I said. I want to know what are the jobs that will be available to your 10-year-old in 2033, 10 years from now. I'm coming to you guys saying, I'm going to talk to the school leaders and say, here's what I need you all to do is to evaluate the programs you have in your school. And I need you to evaluate whether or not those things really do help prepare our kids for that. That's where I come in as someone who coaches and mentors leaders across the country. Now I'm going to pass it off to Lydia. Lydia, what do you do next?
So for me personally, it's how do I use what I do every single day to teach young people industry skills, which I'm currently doing now. How do I teach young people industry skills so that they can literally learn exactly the skills that I hold and that I facilitate every single day, just doing the work that I do? How do I now teach that to young people so that they have viable skills that they can, even if they choose not to go straight into college, how can they make money now with transferable skills that they can literally take and what they do every day, who they are as a person, take that and apply that to create jobs and to create an income for themselves now.
And pass it on to Chloe now. What are you going to do now,
Passing
Chloe?
it.
Pass the mic. I think you touched on it before, which is thinking about the problems that have plagued us from generation to generation. If we think about the environment and environmental change, if we think about equity, if we think about water, if we think about conflict, all these things that are almost, they feel insurmountable, there will be industry around them, right? So for instance, we have lots of climate change, lots of climate refugees, lots of dwindling resources, dependence on foreign oil. There will be jobs around that in the future, in 10 years, guaranteed, around clean water, around access to alternative power sources. And there will definitely be work opportunities and entrepreneurship opportunities around those issues. So we have to kind of follow the line to what problems are worsening and how much money is going to be thrown after them, because that's where the grants, the funding, the workforce development opportunities will happen. And not to come from a negative perspective, but if we're thinking really practically about what's going to be a lucrative industry for our students to get into, or something that will have social impact, that's where it will be.
Go ahead, Jamila.
Yeah.
Pass it on to Jamila.
This has made me think about, every great movement is sparked by emotion. There's nothing that we haven't done as people that there wasn't some type of spark emotionally to cause us to increase our why and our drive to address that particular situation or problem. That is essentially innovation. That's where it comes from. Like, you have a feeling, you have a thought, there's a connection between whatever that is and how it impacts you personally. That's how, you get the energy to move the needle. And so when I think about social emotional learning, again, in order to get students excited about all these possibilities, they have to understand who they are and whose they are, right? And when you think about social emotional learning from a culturally cultural lens, it's about, who are the innovators that look just like me that are doing this work in this field, right? What are the problems that need to be addressed, and how do they impact me to a point where now I feel so emotionally connected to it, I want to do something about it, whether that's climate change, whether that's in the legal system, whatever the case may be. It's about making those connections so that their why is so strong, they're going to want to engage, they're going to want to act, they're going to want to critically think about how to solve this problem. And so we have to, encourage students to dream big. And that, again, increasing that spark is what's going to lead to that transformational work. So I coined this phrase, social emotional liberation. It's about not only are you learning information, but now you're doing something to change the trajectory of your life and the lives of those around you. So that's the liberatory part of social emotional learning.
Well, Lydia, I think goes back to what I said earlier. Never assume that the loud is strong and the quiet is weak, because as you can hear from our guests from the night, they are anything but weak, and they are certainly skilled at everything that they do and what they talk about. And as we get ready to get out of here, because I don't want y'all to give them too much, but I do
Can't
want
give
to.
them too much.
Don't give them too much. I just want you all to just express in 30 seconds or less, what does it feel like to know that you will be presenting at OSG's first ever annual Transformational Leadership Conference at Columbia University?
I'll answer that. I'm really honored. I'm very much looking forward to it, because I feel like this is a group that's always looking to be inspired and to learn and to move and act on good information. And I always, like you said, I'm more of a quiet storm. I say this to a fault, but I'm a Virgo. So like a flex to me is something incredibly well done, thorough, just like groundbreaking, innovative, but it's not necessarily like me hyping it up. So I'm hoping that I can really, really bring a strong presentation that lets school leaders sit back and say like, wow, I've never considered that before. And I'm going to think about how I do things a lot differently, or that they are pointed to some body of research or some, new technology, but something that really, when they go back to school on Monday, they're thinking like, wow, my mindset has been transformed. Like I have new information. And I feel like a lot of people in OSG are always open to receiving something that's new, transformative, that's fresh, and being change agents in their school. So I'm thrilled. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you. And I'm so glad I got to talk tonight.
Yes.
People don't know how I sound.
Go ahead, Jamila.
What about you, Jamila?
Yeah, I would say that, and I tell Dr. McKeesey this all the time. OSG has transformed my practice as an educator, as a former school leader. And so just being in community with like-minded people who are unapologetic in their desire to push the envelope, to challenge, to try new things, to be innovative. That's what I really appreciate about OSG. OSG is really shaking things up. And so I'm really excited to present at this Transformational Leadership Conference, to not only be able to share and impart some wisdom about social emotional learning and advisory to those that are going to be attending my session, but to learn from all of the phenomenal speakers that are going to be presenting. So I'm so ready for it. Let's go. Let's go.
All right, y'all. So y'all heard it first. You heard it right here. We're not holding anything back. We're giving y'all an opportunity to hear about all the amazing things. So Dr. McKeesey, close us out.
Absolutely. Well, Lydia, I think how we're gonna close that all the time is something that you said backstage in on Friday, and you said OSG and what we do is often imitated but never duplicated, and so I think that
Never
really does
duplicated.
show or speak to who we are, and most certainly as Jamila Captain Kirk put in the chat, we're a different breed, and I stand firm on that. And it's more than just a hashtag. It's a way of life for all of us. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And again, thank you so much, ladies, for not being quiet and really stepping up the way you all have, and actually earning the right to speak at this conference. Nothing was given to you all. You earned it. And everybody's going to be that much better off from hearing from you. So thank you so much. Lydia, again, you fall right into the same conversation really well in a neat package. And so I think I should turn it back over to you and let you end it the way you do.
All right. So OSG, often imitated, but what? Never what?
Never duplicated. Yes,
Never
yes.
duplicated. And we out.